Baseball is back.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
I'm Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, where we bring you the hottest tea and talk about all things Arizona Diamondbacks from across the pond. Here in London, we're proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. I'm your host at GB Diamondback, and today we are talking about Ildemaro Vargas and the hot slugging start that he's made to the Spring Training Cactus League and his campaign to become, the backup infielder utility guy on the Diamondbacks roster, which of course is a very hotly contested position. I've got my piping hot cup of Earl Grey right here ready to go, so let's get straight into it. Of course, the news this week has been that Blaze Alexander has gone down on a oblique strain, and Tori Lavello is saying that that's likely to be a case of weeks instead of days, so might not be back up and ready for opening day, which sort of makes the backup infielder spot anybody's game. There's been lots of different candidates who've thrown their hat into the ring for that. You have guys like Garrett Hampson in the Diamondbacks organization. There's plenty of solid utility guys and young prospects coming through as well. The likes of Tim Tower can be considered there. Of course, we're expecting Jordan Lawler to play a combination of short and third, so you can move some things around, but plenty of young prospects who you think could fill in there as well. We've seen a little bit more of Gino Groover in spring training this year, and he's looking good. But as of yesterday, where the Diamondbacks slugged their way to an 8-run win over the Rockies, it looks like Ildemaro Vargas, formerly, he's a former Diamondback, but more recently of the Washington Nationals and the Reno Aces, is looking like he's going to be probably one of the primary candidates for that utility infielder spot. They seem to have stepped up and put themselves in the driving seat in more ways than one. When I say driving, their batting is really starting to look like it's pretty solid, and they've had a bit of a competition out there, like in terms of who could hit more home runs in a game. Yesterday, Gino Suarez got a 3-run homer. Ildemaro Vargas got one. Vukovic as well stuck one on the board. But Vargas looking pretty solid. He had a .246 batting average over 97 games in Washington last year, playing second and third. And so far in the Cactus League, he's swapped in for Ketel Marte at second, Eugenio Suarez at third, or Girolamo Perdomo at shortstop. I think we're mostly expecting a combination of second and short for them, but being able to play third is going to be useful, especially if people are going to, see some time with Eugenio Suarez as the DH. So far for Ildemaro Vargas in spring training, he launched a 403-foot bomb in his first at-bat since he returned to the Diamondbacks, since he left. It's his first at-bat since he left in the start of 2020, and yesterday's game in Salt River against the Rockies, he hit .462 with a 15.77 OPS. He's bringing his power hitting from Reno, where, most people will know he's the all-time hit leader, having previously been in the Dbacks organization between 2017 and 2020, and in that time as a Diamondback, he not only hit a famous walk-off homer where he came in as a pinch hitter in the 9th, walked off on a home run in the 19th inning in a game, also came very close to throwing MLB's slowest ever pitch, topping out at just over 33 miles an hour on a pitch in a substitute period in a long game where we needed a pitcher. We've seen some pretty great cameo icon appearances of various guys throwing the ball for the Diamondbacks. Tucker Barnhart made an appearance last year. We saw Josh Rojas the year before that. Pavin Smith has pitched at times as well. Pavin Smith, candidate for all-time best Diamondbacks pitcher. He has a 0.00 ERA, let's not forget. But let's go on to Ildemaro Vargas. He's 33 now, so considered more of a veteran than a potential surprise outside candidate. He's got several years under his belt in the majors, an ever valuable switch hitter, solid power as we're seeing, And like I said, yeah, he's got time in the majors, over 400 career MLB games, bringing experience and composure, which you can never really get enough of, even if you've got a solid lineup with some cool veterans to learn from. You got like plenty of guys there. We've not got quite the Arizona retirement home atmosphere that we've had in a couple of years, but still a good guy to learn from. And that outside experience is good because the other infielder candidates fighting for a spot, the likes of Gino Groover, all those guys in camp, they're perhaps a little more green around the gills than is likely needed if the D-backs are gonna want to make their target and hit the off season this year, the postseason. I think Gino Groover's time will come. We might see him in the majors this year, but he's not going to be somebody you're going to want to put too much pressure to rely on too much. Whereas with Ildemaro Vargas, he'll put up a solid performance 7 or 8 times out of 10, which is what you need out of the guys who you can call upon when you need them on a major league roster. And that utility spot for the Diamondbacks can be a bit of a mixed bag. And we were fairly confident in Blaze Alexander's ability to perform that, but if he's not going to be able to start the season occupying that spot, then yeah, Ildemaro Vargas looking like a very solid choice. And that's before we even get into off the field and the clubhouse presence as well. He's got that nice bit of interpersonal depth that we like to have good vibes in the clubhouse. Gabby Moreno, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Eugenio Suarez, really the lifeblood of this Diamondbacks clubhouse. Great big personalities and who don't clash at all and keep things running very smoothly. But Ildemaro Vargas won a Heart and Hustle award in Washington last year, which sort of goes a bit unappreciated behind Silver Sluggers, Golden Gloves, etc. But the Heart and Hustle award is an award in which each team only nominates one player for. He's got the phrase "Today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow" on his locker. And, that day-by-day approach is really working for them at the moment. Closed out the game yesterday with a tidy double play as part of a great team effort. So, Ildemaro Vargas looking good. I'm excited to see what he's going to contribute to the Diamondbacks this year. But yesterday looked okay. I know it's the Rockies, so it's not always going to be the greatest test for the Diamondbacks, but they can still, represent a banana skin of a team sometimes. Towards the end of last year, there was a series against the Rockies. And we thought, oh yeah, we'll get the wins we need to make the postseason out of that. And I think Diamondbacks lost 2 out of 3, and that sort of came as a shock to everyone. What the hell happened there? So yeah, no, fair play to the Rockies, but it was a great team effort to overturn them yesterday. Zach Gallen got the start, and the Milkman delivered 2 scoreless, which looked fine. Tommy Henry was surprisingly impressive, shut down 3 innings, and he's a guy who's sort of on the outside looking in when it comes to a battle for a spot in the rotation. I think Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson, probably ahead of him. But Tommy Henry, we've seen enough of him in a major league uniform to know that he's got good stuff when he's on his day. He has the potential to really blow up sometimes. But yeah, Tommy Henry looked pretty electric yesterday with 3 scoreless innings. And Eugenio Suarez, of course, was looking good, and people are talking about that home run he hit to drive in 3 runs. That's a good sign as well. But it's definitely Vargas's performance that's a main takeaway if you go ahead and ignore everything going on with Scott McGough again. Like, you're in a 1-inning role in a Cactus League game, and you don't even make it to the end of your own inning. That's kind of how bad Scott McGough was yesterday, and people have talked about, oh yeah, he was an electric closer in Japan. He's fine. Like, this guy gives up 2, 3, 4, 5 runs every single time he gets onto the mound for the Diamondbacks. I don't see how he still has a major league career with the Serpientes. So we're gonna put that to the side before I go on a rant about Scott McGough. Ildemaro Vargas, especially with the news that Alexander's injury is going to be a medium to long-term one rather than just it's an oblique strain. It's not going to be just a couple of days, then he'll be back. Won't be making the opening day roster. So Vargas getting properly loose and warmed up for the year is looking like it is going to be more and more important. And I'm liking the vibes from him at the moment, especially with the development we're getting in terms of starting to see a clearer picture of who's going to be where. Jordan Lawler, Diamondbacks #1 prospect, really establishing himself on and off the field, looking good. We've got solid work on our pitching. Merrill Kelly's actually improved his velocity despite being, a a 5 or 6 pitch guy and relying on being able to throw any pitch at any time. He's improved a lot, and he's actually now throwing multiple pitches much faster than he did. Like he used to, rely on a 91, 92, 93 level fastball. We're seeing, 94, 95 out of him. Brandon Fart's looking okay, and as of right now, the countdown for opening day is at 25 days until we get to see Diamondbacks opening their Major League Baseball series against the Chicago Cubs at Chase Field. Things are looking okay. I'm happy with what's going on a lot in Diamondbacks camp. We've got another game coming up 1 p.m. On MLB TV American time, or 8 o'clock at night here in the UK on Sunday evening, and it's going to be against the Texas Rangers. Let's have a look at what's going to be going on today. It's expected to be Eduardo Rodriguez starting on the mound with John Gray, his counterpart in Texas. Right now, Diamondbacks have a slightly better record than Texas in spring training. We're 4-4; they're 3-5. That's going to be an interesting one because our matchups so far have been a bit of a mixed bag. It was a bit of a tough start to spring training for the Diamondbacks. They lost their first 3 against Colorado for the first 2, and then Seattle, and then beat Cleveland, lost to Chicago, beat Milwaukee, tied with Cincinnati because it's just a spring training game. We don't need to go extra innings. Beat Kansas, and then we beat the Rockies yesterday. So these next 2 games is Texas and then the Cubs again before we get an off day, and then San Francisco. That's a bit of a shift. That's going to be starting to get towards the business end of things before we really get into the stretch. It's within the next 3 weeks. We're going to have games against the Angels. We're going to have 2 days in Saturday and Sunday next week where we play 2 games. So one team's going to go to Cincinnati, the other guy is going to go and play Oakland Athletics, or the Athletics. Then another team's going to play the Athletics the day after, and another team's going to play Texas on Sunday. So we're really starting to get through that roster and look at different things that are going on. We've talked about lots of guys. Ildemaro Vargas looking good. Eugenio Suarez looking good. Geraldo Perdomo signed a contract extension, looking good. Ketel Marte, haven't seen any issues from him. And then Josh Naylor, interviewed in the dugout yesterday. He's not a huge talk to the press kind of guy, but he seems relaxed. We haven't quite seen him blow his top as of yet in a Diamondbacks uniform, but he's a guy who can get on and after people if he doesn't think they're meeting his standards. That infield is looking solid, and then Gabby Moreno's done a lot of work, especially with Corbin Burns, the new ace coming in, on getting used to each other. And I think the importance of catchers in spring training is not to be understated by any stretch of the imagination. We saw Christian Cerda come in and look okay yesterday with Zach Gallen, and then Tommy Henry throwing to him. And of course, Christian Cerda, you may remember in that trade that sent David Peralta away from the Diamondbacks. Christian Cerda was the young catching prospect we got back in return. Has a bit of a unique stance, but was an athletic guy. He's very busy behind the plate. He doesn't really settle into his stance. He's always looking like he's electric, ready to jump. He looked okay behind the dish as well yesterday. So the work the catchers are putting in seems to be paying off, especially with a bit of a dilemma about first and second choice catcher spots. With pending any major catastrophes, it's going to be Gabby Moreno as the first choice catcher, and then we're going to see probably Jose Herrera as the second choice. Of course, Zach Gallen really likes working with Jose Herrera as his catcher, so that's going to have an influence on the decision. And I think Adrian Del Castillo, we're going to see maybe get some reps at DH, but he's going to be on the outside looking in of that catcher battle before we start considering the sweats of AAA, AA quality catchers in the Diamondbacks organization. So things are looking good on that infield. The outfields may be still a little unsettled, but we're seeing plenty of at-bats for both Jake McCarthy and Alek Thomas, both of whom were guys people were talking about, would they be traded in this offseason? Nothing's really swirling that I've heard too much about on the rumor mill as of recently. So, maybe that we'll be keeping, probably Jake starting in center field and Alek as, a pinch runner type thing if we need him. I feel like that's harsh on Alec Thomas because he's really come through, especially in bigger games. So if we're looking at making a run to the postseason, I think Alec Thomas fully has warranted and earned a place to be in that picture. In Torey Lovullo's, I don't know if I'm making it too old fashioned by saying he has a little pin board in his office with all the names that he just moves around, but I think Alec Thomas very much deserves to be in that conversation. I'm sure that it's probably all on iPads now, so you just drag and drop people into little boxes. But I think Alec Thomas deserves a spot in that outfield, and I think there might be some rotation through the outfield as well. One of the benefits of picking up Randall Grichuk to return as part of the DH platoon is he can be a backup outfielder, most notably in right field, which is typically Lourdes Gurriel Jr. plays in the left. We got good guys in center, and then Corbin Carroll will most likely be your everyday right fielder. And we talked last week on the podcast about Corbin Carroll's new batting stance and how his batting average picks up by 0.02 points when he's playing right field instead of playing center field. So we've got options in center field. I don't feel like they'll move Corbin to center unless they have to. But we're starting to see a little bit more of what we know will be the first choice roster. But the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th guys up, that bench, we're starting to see a little more of an indicator of who Torey Lovullo's starting to develop a good vibe with, we get a good feel for. And, I think that's sort of how baseball operates a lot of the time. It's like you call somebody up and you want to make trade, you say, oh, I want blah, blah. And they're like, oh, no, I like blah, blah. If a manager likes somebody, I think that comes for a lot of different factors. It's not just they're a good player, or in the Dbacks case, they're a good player and they contribute well to the clubhouse. Is why we love Geraldo Perdomo so much. Even if he's not the most productive bat in the league, he's still a useful guy who gets on base a lot and one of the best bunters in Major League Baseball. They seem to have that atmosphere, that culture developing again this year, which I really, really like to see. And I think that's the thing that's, all of us as Diamondbacks fans like to see as well. Of course, it's important that we don't, overanalyze stuff in spring training. It's only, a week and a bit into spring training, so it's not like, the season is right on our doorstep. But 25 days to go. It's a pretty big countdown. People are saying, don't overanalyze your stats in spring training. Either you are playing in kind of smaller ballparks and less tense conditions. Like several of the people, if you're on the MLB UK, MLB Europe fan pages, several of the Astros fans over here are having absolutely meltdowns. Where, there's 3 Astros players who have combined for 0 for 23 so far, and these aren't rookies that we're talking about either, and everyone's having an absolute meltdown over this, about all these guys not meeting Astros standards at all. But we're okay. I don't think we're going to be like super scared about what's going on with the Diamondbacks. The recap and the points to take away from yesterday's game against the Colorado Rockies is, slugging's looking good, defense looks okay, pitching looks fine. Zach Gallen's stats yesterday: 2 innings pitched, 28 pitches, 19 strikes, only gave up 2 hits but struck out 3. Curveball and fastball both looking good. And, Zach Gallen's starting to get his arm warmed up as well. He's reaching 93.8 miles an hour, which is a big improvement over his last start. And 3 whiffs on 11 swings is solid too. And I think that's the quotes coming. The biggest thing for him to work on right now is shaping the cutter movement into more of a slider, and that's interesting because the Diamondbacks pitching staff have, one of the best cutters in Major League Baseball. That's what Corbin Burns uses as his fastball. He doesn't throw a fastball; he throws a cutter. And then when it comes to sliders and or sweepers, Brandon Pfaadt's put away sweeper delivery is incredible. The way he gets it down to the bottom left corner of the plate or just off of it to generate a lot of swing and miss. So all these guys really seem to be having a very productive exchange of ideas. Behind Zach Gallen, Tommy Henry, 3 innings, 2 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts, 3 in a row in the 4th inning. Not getting really that much velocity, but effective, and it was better than the disaster of his first outing earlier this week. We saw Kyle Nelson and Scott McGuff. Less said about them the better. But even if your pitching towards later innings isn't fantastic, having good power batting will always get you out of that, and that's what Eugenio Suarez brought to the table. Things are looking good for the Diamondbacks. That's the takeaway, wrap away from this week. There's not any big developing bombshell news stories that I know that are coming up, unless, in the couple of hours between I finish recording this and the episode releases, we go and do something crazy again. So, sorry, no super clickbaity title, no crazy thumbnail this week, but still a good week to be a Diamondbacks fan. I'm feeling positive. The weather's starting to improve a little bit in the UK as well. I'm sat here with the sun on my face, sat on my desk recording this. That's a little shade of Arizona making its way across the pond here. I'm gotta say I'm very much missing the desert right now, and I'm looking forward to getting back, seeing all of you guys in Arizona later this year. I'll be around for a 2-game series against Seattle at the very least in June. I'm hoping to make it back later in the year as well. Who knows? Maybe I might get to see my first ever in-person Diamondbacks postseason game. Wouldn't that be special? We're going to wrap the episode up there. I want to say thank you very much to the partners of the podcast. That's the Home Run Travel Company. If you're a fan based anywhere in Europe and you want to get yourself to America to see some Major League Baseball, Home Run Travel Company are the people to talk to. They've got 2 tours that I know about coming up, and perhaps some that I know about that I can't tell you about yet as well. One on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. It's going to be West Coast up first, and you can come and join me and the gang as we check out Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle, and see some pretty big games, including a repeat matchup of last year's World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. If you want to see something awesome like that in person, have yourself a Dodger dog, have yourself, a beer that's taller than you served in a beer bat. This is the tour to come on, so make sure you get in touch with Home Run Travel Co. on social media. You can also go and follow us at the podcast at Dbacks Podcast on X and on Instagram. We are at Dbacks on Twitter, and I have been your host at GB Diamondback on X, formerly known as Twitter. Thank you very much for listening to the show, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.